I feel like I'm a talented driver. Am I the fastest driver on the racetrack? I don't believe I am. Am I one of the smartest race car drivers on the racetrack? I believe I'm that. That's how I beat everybody.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go on the ball. What a race! California's Kevin Harvick does it. Straight making right there. You're the man.
This is unique to have both of you. Is this the first time that you guys have actually done an official interview together?
I think it is.
It is.
We've never done something like this.
I'm not sure what's going to happen, so it'll be interesting.
Well, that's okay. I think for me, this is quite an honor to be able to have both of you sitting here together, because I find this pairing to be pretty interesting in how it started and how it's evolved. And now you're sitting here as a 3-time Cup Series champion. That has to be far from the expectations that you had when you started in 2013 at Penske. So how do you summarize that in everything that you've gone through, from where you went from Gibbs to your relationship at Penske, and now you sit here with 3 championships?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's remarkable just to think about what we've been able to accomplish together. If I think of my career before Team Penske and where I am now, it's completely different. But you know, the stars aligned at the perfect time. God placed the right people in the right place at the right time for me, and it's really worked out. And you know, when I think about when I was at Gibbs, the performance just wasn't there, right? For many reasons, right? A lot on me, a lot on the team. It just wasn't gelling, wasn't working. But when this opportunity, you know, came up, it needed some stability, right? They went through a couple different drivers, and you know, Shell was looking for somebody that was, you know, stable, and as well as Roger and Team Penske, and we were able to go out there and start slowly gaining some success on the racetrack as well. You know, the first year I was there was right after they won the championship with Brad. So it's kind of nice to be able to kind of follow along the 2-car, and Paul and Brad and myself and Todd were trying to, you know, pick up on it and try to keep up with them. And then a couple of years after that, the success really started to come in, where we can win 5-6 races a year and be threats for championships, and that's really the big difference there.
What have you seen from Joey from the time that he started until now? Because look, Joey and I have had some great moments that are entertaining for the fans, but we've also become what I would categorize as friends, right? And speak a lot about our sport, and just the maturity of our lives have changed. But internally, from your point of view, how has Joey Logano changed from where he started to 3-time champion today?
Well, I think it's ironic that Brad Keselowski was the one that came to me and said, look, we should get Logano to run with us. Obviously, that was an authorization, you might say, or a good reference from the standpoint what Brad saw him. And he came on board, and it was interesting because I had to wait in order to hire him, because Joe Gibbs said, look, I'm going to maybe get him a Cup ride. Will you wait a week? Well, I waited a week with my fingers crossed, hopefully that he'd be available. But he's come on board, and I think as we grew the company and grew the team, there was no question. I think he had one goal, and that was really to be a leader. And I can talk about wins, but when you think about the consistency, and we became good partners. I think that was the key thing, and we do that in the company today. And this moment we sit here with 3 championships, and I think 34, 35 wins, Joey's a leader of the team. You could see it the other night in the duels behind Cindric. I mean, he could have gone and pushed out or pushed in, but I think that he gets it. He understands if we're running 3 cars, only one can win. But if the team wins, he wins. And I think that's the most important thing. And what I've seen him is really work well with our sponsors. And you know, Shell, from your experience with them, they are a terrific sponsor. And they've been with us, and I think he's been a real asset for them and for us. So as I see him at the beginning, he was a good race driver. He's matured through that time, but now he's a leader of the team.
What wasn't working at Gibbs? When you were so young at that particular time, what do you think was the one thing you say, there's probably not one thing, a couple things that you say, okay, I was young, I needed to do this, and then you go to Penske and you want to change what? Because, and the reason I say that, when I went from RCR to SHR, I was I had this stigma around me that was, you can't work with this guy, you can't do this, you can't do that. And when I went to SHR, Rodney sat me down and he said, look, we're here to race, we're here to win. We don't need you jumping over cars. We don't need a story. We need the story to be about winning. So what was that change that fit the Penske culture that you felt like you had to change in your life or career?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, if you look back, when I started at Gibbs, I'm 15 years old. Right? You know,
Tough.
You're 15 years old. What do you know, right?
Right.
You grow up in this environment, in the limelight. At that point in my career, to be honest with you, I never lost. Like I just jumped in cars and won, and I didn't have to work at it. It was just a natural talent was enough to carry me along. And there was a lot of hype, and I believed the hype, which was the worst thing for me at the time. But now looking back at it, it's actually great. But I had to go through those years of struggle, right? I had to get to the Cup Series and struggle. I had to go through there and learn my lessons the hard way. I had to do it in front of everybody, unfortunately. But that's part
It's the
of
world we live in.
part of doing it. And I had to learn also what I needed in a race team to be successful, right? I had to learn myself, for one, how do I be a successful race car driver, but what do I need for people around me? And you don't know that until you go through it. And you work with different people, you start to learn what works, what doesn't work. And like I said, unfortunately, it just didn't work. Like it got to the point where we had to break ties. But when I had the opportunity to walk into the doors of Team Penske, that was my opportunity to do it all the second time. And like anybody else, when you do something the second time, you're going to do better, right? You have all those thoughts in your mind of, I need to treat people this way. I need to look at approach races this way. I need to approach controversy this way. I have an idea of all the mistakes that I've made. I know how to do it better now. And I had a fresh start.
Is that a conversation that you guys had? Was there, when you started, was there say, hey, this is the Penske way?
I wouldn't say that. I
Yeah.
think there's more hype on that than we're a race team.
Yeah.
You know, we want excellence. We want teamwork. We want everyone working together. And to me, we're not the team, and I think Joey saw this, where everybody has their own crew chief and they do their car their own way. We build our cars the same. You don't know which car is going where when we build until we put
Right.
the decals on it. And that made a big difference. And I think he saw that when he came in, that we were committed to everybody on the team. And then as he matured, and we matured too, we got better. And you've seen that over the last decade now. It's been a big time for us from the standpoint of results. And I think that Joey fit in. And I look at it this way. He came in the door as Rick Mears did, and some of the other people have been with us their whole career. And I said to him, look, this is your home now. You come in here and you perform. We got sponsors. And remember, you got the inside people you got to sell, and we got to also sell the outside people, which are sponsors. And he took that on and has done a terrific job.
And that's probably helped you too, because I look at you now, and I look at you from the business side of things, and I'm like, what in the world? I mean, this guy is full on business outside of the car. For me, it was Richard Childress. He was very good he would introduce me to everybody. This is what you need to do. From the business side, because there's a business and a political side to this if you want to be good at it. Like, you can't just get in and drive the car and be one of the greats. You got to understand the whole ecosystem and how this works. How has he helped you with that side of things?
By leading by example, right? And then that's where I was going to go with, just the culture as well of the company. There's never a moment where, like, Roger sat down with me and said, hey, you dress a certain way, you look a certain way, you act a certain way. You just know because that's what everyone else does. And you look at it and you say, okay, who's your leader? Roger Penske's our leader. He does it all this way. That's what this is set up to be. And so you just kind of blend in. If you want to win, you join winners and you watch what they do. And there's not many times that I've ever seen this man lose in anything.
Not lately, for sure.
So, and because of that, yeah, right? But because of that, you start to watch, it trickles all the way down.
Yeah.
Right, for all the way through each level throughout our business or our race team. It's just there. It's just the way things go. And so over the years, you learn that all those little details matter, right? The little things that are just, you may think are nothing, right? Like we said, dressing a certain way or acting a certain way that may not How does that make your race car go faster? It does. It does. You just don't realize it. Those little things that stack up. And like I said, a great leader doesn't have to tell you that stuff. You just see it.
When you look at last year and you look at the first, let's just call it half of the year, it was not good from a performance standpoint. From the outside looking in, you're obviously the leader of helping direct the traffic on what's wrong, analyzing the car. And I talk to people all the time, and they're like, oh, well, they fixed it. I said, no, it's not that easy to fix a problem. There's a difference between guys that can win races and guys that can win races and solve problems. And to me, last year, there were some problem solving that had to go on, and that direction comes from the driver's seat to the engineers and the crew chiefs, and the information just builds, and it's like, all right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go here and we're going to fix this problem, and it evolved into a championship year. When do you think that Joey helped become the leader from the driver's side of it? Because you had this interesting time period where you had Joey and Brad, and it seemed like there was this time when you really came in and started to help with that role of guiding the performance side of things when there was a problem, or you were running good to get better. When do you think that evolved?
I think it's pretty easy. You know, when Brad left, Joey came to me and said, I want to be the leader of this team.
Wow.
And he's done that from the very beginning, and I think as he and Ryan became closer and understood the goals, certainly with Cindric, and our relationships with the Wood brothers, all of this is tied together. But I think the common thread through all of this is the stability of our race team. Because you walk in the door, we've got a chart there. Some 200 and some people have been with the team over 10 years, some 20 years. So that continuity and that domain knowledge has made a difference. And we were not as bad as we look. We got wrecked. I mean, look at that wreck that he had in Richmond. You know, two corners to go, and there was a lot of heat there at the end. That's what it was. He still won 5 races. Yep. You know, he won the Clash. So at the end of the day, I think that at that point he took off. And to me, on the other hand, he still has the confidence, but also he has the respect of what Blaney's doing and what Cindric's doing now. And I think, you know, early on, maybe the question, what's this young guy here? You know, I was a young guy. I'm not going to put my arms around him, but I think they sit down today and they talk about what they really understand, because the cars are the same. And I think our engineering people got better, and quite honestly, we were lost a little bit with a new car, but once we understood and we did some testing, and I think probably the biggest thing when you was at North Wilkes-Barre.
North World Test.
He went to North Wilkes-Barre and ran hundreds of laps there.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of testing there, and that gave us a direction. And that direction has been, you know, obviously, it's been gangbusters for us, and the results show for themselves.
Yeah, I think our team does a great job at, like, and Roger already kind of said this, but we all work together so well. Not only on the racetrack, but what we do off the racetrack, where if all the cars are built the same and drivers are saying different things, we need to talk that out and hash that out and understand what that means, so we can push. If all 3 of us can push the company in the same direction, and it's not one driver saying this, the other driver saying that, and the other one's saying something different, it just confuses everybody. If the drivers can align and then give, you know, more clear advice to what we think we need in our race cars, and the engineers and you know, the mechanics and everybody really can start working on that right direction. You know, and I'm not taking credit for doing all that, right? We have great leaders of Michael Nelson and Travis Geisler that help corral the crew chiefs as well as the drivers and the engineers to make sure that we're steering the ship together, right? We're going up and down together all the way through it. So,
but I think
that's a big piece of it.
There's a real knack to being able to understanding that you're a piece of the equation, and understanding you're a piece of the equation and helping those guys direct it. And it was very evident last year. I think as I walk around, listen, meetings, committees, do you realize that you're one of the leaders in this sport from the driver's side now? How does that?
I do now.
How's that? I mean, that has to make you feel good.
Yeah.
That evolution has to be pretty
but
rewarding.
it's kind of like at the right time. right? I remember I've always gone to the meetings. I've always, like, if they invite me to go something, I'm going to go and listen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak up unless I feel confident in the way I feel, whether it's a race, a NASCAR meeting about where we're going the direction of our sport, or our race team meeting, or whatever it may be. And for years, I just listened in those meetings, right? I let you talk, right? And I let the guys that have been around a long time, that understood the sport better than me, because I had to learn. I had to learn the whole ecosystem on how this works, because we all need to win together, right? Whether it's the team owners, if it's NASCAR, if it's the drivers, the sponsors, the TV partners, everybody's got to win together. And that's one thing that's helped me just kind of over the years, being in those meetings and listening to other people's perspectives on what makes it all work. It's way more complex than I thought it was when I first started. So I think that's really helped me understand, right? Whether it's an interview at the end of a race and you're frustrated and you just want to go home, it's part of the job.
Yeah.
To do that stuff. It's important for our sport to do that stuff. I just think it's very important, whether it's when I leave this sport, to be able to leave it better than it was when I got here, right? Like somebody did that for me beforehand, right? And it's the same thing with Team Penske, right? Roger and the other drivers and other leaders of that company have built this incredible mega race team that we see today, right? Like, I take that responsibility very seriously, that if I'm that guy now that's helping lead this whole thing, I want to make sure that it's as good or better than it was when I first got there, because that's what happened before me.
Has there ever been a moment where that you remember that you had to sit him down and say, all right, we need to do whatever better, or you're in trouble today? Is that a phone call from Roger Penske, or is that a, hey, I'm coming to see you, or you need to come see me? How does that work?
I would say, Kevin, I can't remember when I had to make a call like that or put my arm around him in the room. What I told him, I said, we're going to have bad days. And when you get out of the car, I would say, hey, Jimmy Johnson gets out of the car and it's a bad day, he's positive. And I think that's one thing that Joey's learned. It does us no good to be an expert, after the race we've had a bad day. And I think that, he's just grown in the sport. I always say, when he puts that helmet on, he's a different guy. There's no question about it, and the way he races. And look, you and he had many times on the racetrack, but I
think I loved it. But it made everybody better.
But the respect. On the other hand, look, he wants to win, and you could just see it last year when we got down to the championship there, and to have both of our guys again, racing each other. And we got there, the guys worked on the cars, and we try to make our cars better. And I think we evolve these cars every single race. It's little things. And think about it. We bring people up. We fill the funnel from the bottom, not at the top. Jonathan Hassler, you look at that. Paul's been with us, started in Xfinity. Miles now is over with the Woods brothers, and you've got the whole team has grown that way. And I think I think the most important is respect within the team and acknowledge the success. And, I look at Ryan and what he's been able to build. I remember when he walked in our trailer at 17, 18 years old, and look at him now, 10 years later. I mean, he's a real player. But these guys respect each other, and their crew chiefs are working together. And I give a lot of credit to Geisler and certainly Mike Nelson and the rest of the team. And you don't see the people inside that work every day. They're the unsung heroes, really, that make a difference. And I think that Joey's been a great catalyst to keep that together.
So what's next? Is there anything that he has that you'd like to drive or race? Or
I love NASCAR racing.
I know you love NASCAR racing, but is there
this.
anything at some point, Joey, you're going to have to burst outside of this bubble, and you're going to have to try something that's fun? You're gonna have to step out.
Fun.
This is
as long as we keep winning, it's
but,
fun.
I mean, no IndyCar test or anything like that. Nothing intriguing.
I would like to drive
This guy
one.
races all around the world.
Everything.
Roger Penske has everything that you could possibly race.
I would like to try other things sometimes. I love driving NASCAR. I love driving stock cars. This is my dream since I was 6 years old. Right when I turned on the TV and watched, all the greats in the '90s, I was like, man, this is what I want to do. That's never wavered for me.
Yeah.
Now I will say, as I'm obviously exposed a lot more to IndyCar, would I like to drive one? Absolutely, I'd like to drive one. Do I want to race one? Not necessarily.
I'd like to see you drive it.
I'd like to see if I can do it.
I'd love to see that.
Or the sports car stuff. Like, that stuff's cool. There's no doubt it's cool, but I'm specialized in one thing, right? I'm very specialized in stock car racing. I feel like I'm a talented driver. Am I the fastest driver on the racetrack? I don't believe I am. Am I one of the smartest race car drivers on the racetrack? I believe I'm that. That's how I beat everybody. And I need to be able to focus really hard and work hard to gain that advantage, or make up that little bit of speed that I need to be quicker. I need to work on to do that.
Yeah.
And I think if I try to take any effort away from that to do something else,
Joseph, you
it's
can
gonna hurt
have a
me.
little bit of fun every once in a while. It's just, we're talking one day.
Kevin, the only thing that's fun to me is winning.
I know.
Okay, that's all I want.
We'll let
to do.
you can't win anything in January, so maybe we'll take you to
I mean, I'd
Florida.
have a little fun doing that.
We'll
That'd
take
be
you to Florida and let you drive. So,
Okay.
couple of last questions. So, typically we ask people at the end of our interviews, what was your first car? Do you remember that you bought?
It was an MG TC, 1950.
Yeah.
Before you were born.
Yes. Well before I was born. Yes. And the other part is you have so many different experiences. What was your favorite race car that you ever drove?
Well, I guess the favorite race car that I drove was Tellar Special. It was a car, it was a Formula One car that had been wrecked up at Watkins Glen. And then we had the engine out of Jack Brabham's car that he ran at Indy. And we put it together and put a body on it. We blew everybody off, and as usual, they made us change the car. So to me, that was the best car, because I raced with Moss and Gurney and those guys back in those days at Riverside and Laguna, which the West Coast stuff. But I would say that car was amazing. And driving the Chaparral too, with the automatic transmission, with Shelby complaining that GM was in the racing business, was another one that was terrific. And I guess I have to say the Pontiac, that I drove, for what was it, what year it was, but Ray Nichols and Goldsmith was driving, and I remember Foyt was in that race, ended up winning. I led it and then had a gearbox go out. But those are things that it's so long ago, but it built a base for me. And then I got out because I wanted to become a business guy. I had a Chevrolet dealership, and I needed to get insurance. I needed to borrow money from a bank. And you couldn't do that unless you were not a race driver. So I made a pivot there. And then shortly after that, when we started our team, but I came from an experience of racing. And the early days, I remember we had sponsors, $250 at an SCCA. You couldn't put them on the car, so I put tape on and let it blow off by the second lap. So
Always got the marketing in mind.
I could tell you we had a lot of fun, but I think the NASCAR, and you talk about Joey and what else he can do, but these guys can try these cars. But when you race 38 weekends, I don't know how you keep yourself up, physically and really mentally. And sometimes you're running when you're hurt too, and these guys never stop.
Yep.
And I think Joey is a perfect example of that day in and day out. And I always talked about it today, coming down on the plane, about how every single weekend, one weekend maybe in the next several months, that they have time off, and that's everybody. This is just not the driver. So it's a full-time commitment for you, your family, and obviously commercially for your sponsors.
Yeah.
I think one of the neatest parts about Team Penske, and it's something we don't talk about enough, is listening to Roger talk about the history of our company, is I don't know if our race fans, especially the newer race fans, know what Team Penske is about, right? There's no doubt in my mind that it's the most decorated race team in America, right? When it comes to the amount of years they've been racing, all the different types of forms of motorsports, the stories that come along with that.
I love the stories.
There's a heritage center that we have, and it's absolutely incredible to walk through. It's the blueprints of the old Indy cars. It's the old trophies, the helmets, the fire suits of the drivers, all the different drivers that have driven for them. I always remember the 50th anniversary of Team Penske, and all the drivers were there, and I was like,
amazing,
unbelievable. And it's so awesome to be a part of that, right? To just have a little piece and say that you've won a race for Team Penske, like some of these amazing race car drivers are. And when we went to Darlington, we had the Mark Donahue throwback car. Right? pioneer of Team Penske
Yeah.
as far as the driver's side. And that's just really cool to be a part of that and get to show that and keep that tradition going for years into the future.
Well, it's fun to watch what you guys have built. I appreciate you guys taking the time today, and thank you.
Yeah.